Hey y'all, it's David Ducker coming back at you, and today I'm going to be talking about exposition. I just had a discussion with someone on a forum about exposition. I saw some blog posts too about exposition. And they're saying now, oh, exposition is amazing, it's great, it's wonderful. And in my opinion, exposition is terrible. It's awful. It's boring. It slows the game down. It's hackneyed and forced, and it's just I would never say use exposition. Never would I tell you to tell, don't show. That's awful to me. And also to my high school English teacher, she'd tell you that's awful as well. So let me go through and tell you something about telling people something, brother. So I was in a game where there was a lot of exposition. You started the game, and the GM pulls out a sheet of paper, and he starts reading. And he's reading, and he's going through. And I take notes as a player, so I've got my character sheet, flip it over. I'm taking notes, and he just kept going and going and going and going. And then my whole back of my character sheet was covered in point form notes. The whole sheet, before we even got started, I had a full page of notes on different NPCs and different countries and the history and just all this stuff. And right off the bat, information overload. I can't remember all this. I can't absorb it that quickly. It's not going to sink in. So I'll have to review my notes for later, I guess. If any of this is important to what we're going to do this session, the session will be awful because I can't absorb all that so quickly. So that's kind of an extreme example, but it really illustrates the point. Like you can't just dump information on the players. First of all, it's boring to listen to you talk. So I'm sorry, but it is. Whoever you are, if you just talk at length, ad nauseum, it's going to be boring. And especially when they showed up not to listen to a lecture, but to play in a role-playing game and go back and forth with you, right? I mean, I'm sure you wouldn't want to listen to me talk for hours and hours on end. But it could potentially be entertaining as long as that's what you're expecting. But if you're expecting a role-play and go back and forth, and you got me talking for hours and hours on end, that'd be really upsetting. I'd be upset. So first of all, it's boring. Second of all, like I said, you can't absorb the information that much. You can probably only absorb 3 key points of information per session. That's about it. So you don't want to get information overload on your players because they'll forget things. And that also comes back to if you introduce 5 elements and the game is only 5 hours long, you can only spend 1 hour on each element. So they're not going to be really deep and complex and developed and ingrained. Like for me, if I'm going to introduce one element, I'm like, okay, I'm going to spend the whole session on that element, 4 or 5 hours. Well, and then the players will know that element back and backwards and forwards, and they'll never forget it. Because we spent 4 hours going over it, and we didn't introduce anything else that session. There's no information overload. There's just one thing. We're going to hammer it home really good. And then later, if it reappears, we'll do a little refresher. So this is, of course, a show, don't tell. Don't just tell them the Duke is evil. Show them the Duke walks in, and he has an arrogant snarl on his face, and he speaks disdainfully towards his servants, and he keeps few men about him at any time, and when he eats at the high table, he doesn't touch anything that a servant has touched, and he only invites his core group, his clique, to sit with him. The rest of the high table is bare, whereas everyone else is seated below them all. So he's He's putting himself above everyone physically, you know, and I'll really grind in why this guy is evil and what his style of evil is. You know, if he's an arrogant prick, or if he's just a big bully, or if he's a reverent, you know, priest, or whatever it is. Don't just tell them that, oh, he's an irreverent priest. Don't tell them that at all. Just have, oh, you meet this guy, and he kind of snickers as he sees your holy symbol around your neck, and he makes disdainful remarks towards the gods, and as he passes by a temple, he spits on the ground in front of it, and you know, he sees a priest collecting alms outside, and he purposely bumps into the guy, just shoulders him, and then yells at him for being clumsy. You know, you should watch where I'm going, son. Or didn't your God tell you that I was going to be moving through here? You know, just being an asshole to the clergy. Now you're like, oh, this guy's, he hates organized religion. You know, he's an atheist, or he's a priest, or, you know, or he's just whatever he is. You know, he just worships it. Maybe he just worships a different god. But you have that mystery and you develop it. You just don't come out and say, oh, I am an priest, and then move forward with the character without establishing that. Really drive home that he is an priest. Even if you meet someone and you know about them, if you meet someone and you're like, oh, he's got a reputation for being very rude, but then you meet him and he's not rude, you know, that could tell you things. That could tell you maybe he's lying to you. He's putting on a show for you, or maybe his reputation is false. You know, so having that conflict between knowledge and experience can be great too. But anyway, I'll come back to the show don't tell. So my current game, Return to the Rune Fangs. I'm sure you've been following it throughout episodes like 10 through to 15. So for these 5 episodes, the characters are moving through Averland, and they stop at you know, 3 different towns in Averland, and in each town they get to meet that local noble and learn about his court. You know, so in Averheim, they had dinner with Countess Starline, and they got to learn about her style and her personality. And then they moved on to Heideck, and they got to meet, was it Baron? I want to say Baron. Well, it's Baron Waldberg. I can't remember his first name. I think it's Siegfried. Baron Siegfried Waldberg. And they got to learn about him and his style. You know, and then they went further south to Grenstadt, and they met Baron Christoph Richthofen, and they learned about his style and his lands. You know, and we really developed the cast of characters. And the reason we do this, and that it took 5 sessions to intro all these different characters and their styles, is so that the characters know who they are and can tell them apart. Because now that they're coming back to Nuln, they're going to meet all these characters again. You know, and it's going to be like a big party, a big gala, a big tourney. So there's going to be all these characters they've met previously have come back there. And the players won't get confused about who's who, because I spent, you know, hours and hours on each one of them, detailing them. And this was all intentional. Like, right off the bat, I was like, okay, the tourney is what is important, and it's going to kick off the plot, right? So the tourney could have been session 1, and I'm like, oh, you meet these 5 guys, and then you meet these other 5 guys, and you know, there's this complex web of politics between them. But you just met 10 people, and they have this complex web, and you're just thrown in the middle of it. That's overwhelming and it's confusing. You know, so instead of that, I said, well, this won't be the first session. This will be like the 20th session, because we got 10 elements to introduce, 10 different, you know, noble houses to introduce. So, you know, they ended up journeying through Averland, and they met those those three noble houses. Actually, another noble house was traveling with them, so they got a lot of knowledge about House Holloman as well. So now, when we come back to the tourney, they already know 5 of those 10 elements. And they could have gone the other way. They could have gone through Wissenland and met those 5 noble houses, and then things will be kind of reversed in their knowledge, because it's a sandbox. You can go wherever you want, do whatever you want. And they went through Averland, and they didn't really make really good friends either. So they could have gone through Wissenland and made enemies, and it would have kind of reversed things. Or they could have gone through Wissenland and made a lot of friends there. I mean, it'd be the same result, but through a different experience. So my point again, it comes back to, what are you trying to accomplish, and how are you going to tell this story in a way that's entertaining and memorable? So if I want to tell the story of intrigue and politics, first you have to introduce every faction, and you can't just exposit and ramble about it. You have to actually role-play through it. Oh, here's an adventure with this noble house, and here's an adventure with that noble house. And now you know both houses, so now if they are clashing, you can pick a side, and you can have an educated opinion. An informed or misinformed, if they were lying to you, opinion. But it's more fun than just meeting two people who hate each other, and you don't know either one of them, so you don't really care as much. But if you know both of them, and they hate each other, now it's interesting. You can pick a side. You might even just pick your own side and be like, oh, I like both of these guys. They're fighting each other. I gotta try to convince them not to. Or if you're like, I hate both of these guys. I hope they kill each other. I'm gonna wait for them to finish, and then I'm gonna kill the winner. Or you just pick a side. Whatever you do, it's a more interesting story once you know who's involved in it. So again, don't use exposition. It's information overload. It's a sloppy technique. It's not memorable, and that's about it. That's 3 really good reasons not to use it. Also, you could even say just don't use it because it's too quick. If you want to have one of these epic campaigns, sometimes the time investment adds a lot to it. The build up of momentum. If you've been playing a character for 100 hours, you care about that character. You're invested in him. Versus if you've been playing the same character, but you've only been playing as him for 10 hours, you don't really care that much. You don't have a good feel for that character. So just as you need to intro the NPCs, their factions, the players need to develop their characters as well. They need that time investment to come in. Like with the paladin that I mentioned previously, who had that the character development. He came in and he's an elf and a priest and a warrior, which is basically what a paladin is, like a multi-class. So, and he had his own personal history. So I got 4 different elements of his character, major elements. I had a lot of minor elements, but 4 or 5 different major elements. So like I'll spend one session really pushing how elves are different and they do things different. And this is how exactly elves are different. Then I'll spend one session focusing on his clergy. On this is my goddess, and this is why she's awesome, and this is why she's not so awesome. And I'll spend a whole session doing that as a player. And I'll come back I'm going to show up my fighting style now. And, this is how I fight, and why I fight, and how I'm good, and how I'm bad at fighting. And I'll come back and it takes you time to develop your character, just as it takes the GM time to develop the world around that character. So, just for the time investment, exposition is bad, because you want a lot of time investment. most of the time. You know, there's an exception to every rule. I could see you using some exposition for a one-shot game. You know, that might be the one time when you don't have that time to develop it. But even there in the one-shot, try to do the show and try not to just tell them. So that's my big ramble on exposition, on show don't tell. Let me know what you think. If you've got any scenes or situations that you set up as exposition, anytime that you slowed the pace down to make sure there was no information overload. Or tell me some horror stories. When did the GM overload you with info? When did they read you 10 pages of exposition and you fell asleep after the first 2 pages, and then you didn't know what to do for the whole rest of the campaign because you couldn't remember 1,000 things that he mentioned. You could only remember like 3 of them, which is what most people can remember from a single story or situation. But I'm going to sign out now. I hope everybody has a good day out there in YouTube land. Cheers.